The story begins in Pennsylvania, where a young couple and their little daughter move into an old colonial home with high hopes of starting a new chapter in life. The house stood tall, its weathered bricks holding a sense of history that fascinated them. At first, life seemed calm and peaceful, but subtle disturbances crept in. Cold drafts swept through rooms with no open windows, doors shut softly on their own, and faint creaking echoed in the hallways late at night. The couple dismissed these signs as the quirks of an aging home. But soon, the uneasiness grew harder to ignore. The family felt eyes on them, especially when the house grew silent. It wasn't long before the sense of comfort turned into quiet dread, and the realization began to form that perhaps they weren't alone in their new home after all. Late at night, the wife found herself awake, listening intently to a strange sound. At first, she thought it was wind outside, but soon she recognized it. Whispers soft and low, drifting through the walls as if someone was speaking just beyond the plaster. The voices were faint, but one word chilled her blood. It was her name. She dismissed it as imagination until it happened again, night after night, always after midnight. She confided in her husband, but he brushed it off, believing it to be stress or exhaustion. Yet the whispers grew louder, sometimes seeming to move across the walls from room to room. The house no longer felt safe. Every creak in the silence made her heart race. She began sleeping lightly, waiting for the next whisper to come, unable to shake the feeling that someone unseen was trying to reach her from the other side. The haunting was no longer subtle. It was personal. Their daughter was the first to see it. One night, her terrified scream shattered the silence, sending the couple rushing into her room. She clutched her blanket, pointing with trembling hands to the darkened corner. "He's standing there," she sobbed, her little eyes wide with fear. The parents saw nothing, but her cries shook them deeply. The next morning, she refused to sleep in her room, insisting a man had stood at the foot of her bed, watching silently. The parents tried to soothe her fears, but soon, they too noticed strange figures in the corner of their eyes, shadows that moved when nothing else did. The silent guest had made himself known, no longer hiding in whispers or chills. The presence was undeniable, heavy in the air, suffocating the family's peace. Every room seemed colder, every night longer, and they knew the haunting was no longer just in their imagination. The guest was real, desperate for answers. The couple began researching the history of their colonial home. Old county records and newspaper clippings revealed a dark past. Decades earlier, a man had lived there with his wife and children until tragedy struck. A sudden fire consumed much of the property, leaving him the only survivor. Locals whispered that he never recovered, that he wandered the halls for years, speaking to his lost family until he too passed away inside the house. Some claimed he was buried on the property, his spirit tied to the home in eternal grief. The family felt a chill as they realized the story matched their experience. A man who had lost everything now roamed as the silent guest, unwilling to let new lives replace his sorrow. Knowing his history did not bring comfort. It made the haunting more personal, as though his story had entangled itself with theirs forever. The disturbances escalated quickly. It began with harmless movements, keys sliding across the table, the rocking chair swaying on its own. But soon, the activity turned darker. Lights flickered violently, glass shattered in empty rooms, and heavy footsteps marched down the hallways when no one was there. The family's dog became their unwilling alarm, barking and growling at invisible presences, refusing to enter the basement where the air always felt thick and heavy. One night, the father captured something chilling on his camera, a shadowy figure crossing the hallway when the rest of the family was asleep. The evidence was undeniable, and the house no longer felt like a home but a prison of fear. The silent guest had grown stronger, feeding on their terror, and a line between the living and the dead blurred. They were trapped with something they couldn't control or understand. An escape no longer felt possible. One evening, as the family gathered in the living room, the silence shattered with a scratching sound. At first, they thought it came from the walls like rodents, but then they saw it. words slowly forming across the plaster as if an unseen hand carved them out. "I never left." The message read, jagged and raw. Terror struck them deeply, for the silent guest had finally made direct contact. It was no longer just shadows or whispers. It was a voice carved into their reality. Every night afterward, the scratching returned with different words, sometimes pleas, sometimes warnings, but always cold. The family realized they were not dealing with a lost spirit searching for peace. This was something claiming ownership, a presence unwilling to let go. The haunting had shifted from eerie disturbances to a clear declaration. They were intruding in a house that had never truly been theirs. Exhausted and afraid, the family sought help. They reached out to a local priest and a team of paranormal investigators who agreed to visit the home. The investigators set up cameras, recorders, and sensors throughout the house, determined to capture the truth. What they found left them shaken. The recordings captured a man's whisper, "This is my home," spoken in a tone that froze their blood. The priest performed blessings, sprinkling holy water and reading prayers, but with every attempt, the house grew restless. Doors slammed, candles blew out, and one of the investigators was scratched across his back by unseen hands. The silent guest resisted fiercely, as if defending his territory. Instead of relief, the family felt more endangered than ever. Every attempt to drive him out only fueled his anger. The house had become a battleground between the living and the dead, and the haunting showed no signs of ending. The final night in the house became one they would never forget. The activity erupted into chaos. Doors slammed with thunderous force, mirrors shattered into pieces, and furniture toppled violently as if flung by invisible hands. The family huddled together in fear as the silent guest appeared more present than ever, his shadow stretching across the walls, looming over them. The daughter screamed as the cold presence passed right through her, leaving her trembling and breathless. It was clear they were no longer safe. With no other choice, the family fled the house that night, leaving behind their belongings, their dreams, and the life they had hoped to build. Though they never returned, the haunting never truly left them. Nightmares, strange shadows, and whispers followed, a reminder that some guests are never gone. The silent guest had changed them forever, binding them to a story of sorrow and fear.